everybody, and welcome to today's episode of The Unlock Show. I'm Tracy Wilson, and I'm going to be your host for the next 30 minutes. Always a pleasure to have you guys here. It is Friday morning here in Australia, and I'm going to get ready this afternoon to head off to the Sunshine Coast to spend some time with my sister, which I might tell you a little bit more about a little bit later on in the show. But if you're watching today, I want you guys to know a couple of things. One is that this show is interactive. So to be able to interact with me inside of the show, if you're watching it live, all you've got to do now is click that button above that says StreamYard and make sure that I can see you, because I'll be able to see your comments coming straight through to me today, and I'll be able to answer any questions that you have. We're going to talk about something really interesting today, and it was really been inspired by some of the things that I've been watching going on in a few other Facebook groups, and it really made me stop and think about time and how we often talk about, is the time right? Is the time right to do X, Y, Z in our life? So that really is the topic that I want to talk about today. And we're going to explore that a little bit further. And we're going to help you to try and determine with some discernment, how do you know if the timing is right for you to do something? So hi to everybody who is joining me right now. If you're on the live show, you are inside the Success Secrets for Family, Business and Life. And the Unlock Show is brought to you by Metadime Digital, which is an amazing organization that brings all of these shows to the group that we are in. If you're watching on another platform, I'd highly recommend you get yourself over to Facebook and you find us on Facebook so that you can get right in on the action inside of the Success Secrets for Business, Family and Life group, because that's where we share everything in there, give you heaps of tips, tools, resources. But it's not just me. There's a whole lot of other really cool and experienced business owners also in there doing exactly the same thing. So that's where you come if you want to thrive in business, family and life. Anyway, let's get this show on the road. Let's talk about, how do you actually know if the time is right to do anything in your life? Well, let's start with this. So we know that when we want to make when we're wanting to make a decision about, so when you're wanting to make a change or you're wanting to do something in your life, that usually starts with a decision. And before that decision, there is a series of events that usually takes place that brings you to a point where you need to make a decision. And usually those things are stuff like, what you were doing, the excitement is kind of turned to exhaustion, or you're not really enjoying it anymore. And it brings you to this crossroads where you've got to think about, well, what should I do now? I've got these other opportunities, and should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? For some people, we sit in this period of procrastination, and we don't make the shifts or the decisions as quickly as we possibly could. And I'm going to give you some reasons for that, and also some things that you might want to consider, which will help bring your decision making to the forefront, and you'll be able to make those decisions a lot quicker. The other thing that often happens is that that you make a decision because you're wanting to do something, and maybe you've been thinking about it for quite some time, and all of a sudden the uncertainty that used to trigger some anxiety is no longer there. You don't feel anxious about making that big decision anymore. And we know that in every moment of our life, we are making constant decisions. And I've said this on another show that often, we're always making decisions, right? So we're making between 50 and 60,000 thoughts come into our head each and every day, and we're constantly having to make a decision. We're making decisions about everything. What do I wear? What do I eat? What should I say on a show like this? So on and so forth. So there's usually a moment in time where we are, where we're constantly making decisions. So we know that we have a lot of capability to be able to do that, but there are like these micro decisions that we make that are like, we just do them because they are second nature, and they are unconscious decisions. And then there's these big things. We might have these, we call them big rocks, big decisions that we're making in our lives. Should I move countries? Should I change jobs? Should I give up my job and start something new? Should I start a family? All these big milestones and decisions that we make in our lives do require some, more thought and more discernment that goes with them. But to make those decisions as fast as you can with a level of A, discernment, and B, comfort that you know that where you're going is going to be okay. And Robin's saying here, yes, sometimes we're kind of forced. She's saying here, we're kind of forced into those crossroads decisions. And she's saying, like now. Yeah, so in every moment we're doing that. The other is that sometimes it just, whatever it is that you were doing before, just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make sense anymore to be doing what you were doing. And I'm going to give you an absolute example of this in my own life. And it's something that has happened very, very recently, like yesterday. So I'm going to share that with you and the reasons why I made that decision. And it was really because it just didn't make sense anymore. And then other times we just do stuff. Why? Because we wanted to, because we felt like it. But the reality here is that, those are all kind of reasons that bring us to the crossroad where we need to make a life changing decision. And the reality is, or the truth of the matter is, that when do you know, or how do you know that the time is right? Well, unless you've got a crystal ball, you don't. And unfortunately, look at this. This is the best I got. It's like a Kmart diffuser. That is my crystal ball, and it does not tell me what's going to go on in the future. So I'm not sure if you've got a crystal ball that maybe I can borrow and I can have a look and see what's going on in the future, but I don't know. And some people will believe that what we do in our lives and the decisions that we make, that our pathways are already created for us, that we are just here, going through the motions, and we are playing the part, playing the role that has been scripted for us in this life. Others think that we're here. They don't believe in any of that. We have to make our own pathway. We have to make our own decisions. So whatever it is that you believe, I believe that there are some things that we can do that help us to determine whether or not the time is right for us in that moment. And sometimes, we make decisions and the timing was off. Sometimes, you go through, particularly when you're an entrepreneur, and we're doing things and things don't work out. And I'm a firm believer that's because it's not because you weren't any good and you weren't going to make that thing that you were doing in that moment work. It just was the wrong moment. It was the wrong timing, and it could be for a multitude of different things. So let me help you kind of understand what you can do and how you can determine whether or not things kind of fit right with you, whether they sit right with you, and whether or not the timing is right for you to do things. And like Robin was just saying before in the comments, was that sometimes our hand is forced. And if any of you guys know, my backstory, you'll know that I was a mum at a really young age. Was all of that planned? Well, no, nature took over and it just happened. But nature told me that at that time I was ready to be a mum, and I grabbed it with both hands and off we went. And it was absolutely the right timing, because if I didn't follow through with that at that time, then I certainly wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So I wanted to share with you, and this is something that's actually coming up in a book that Vicky and I are releasing in a few weeks' time. And I wanted to give you guys a bit of an insight into this, and an insight into the fact that right inside of us we have this thing called our own inner genius. So we are capable of so many things as humans, and often we don't even use 40% of our capacity. And I think I read that, or there was some research on that, about why the military pushes their people so hard, because they realize, and they put them under an immense amount of pressure, is because they realize that as humans, we really only use about 40% of our actual capacity. They want to push us to a point where we're using a lot more of that. So for you guys that are actually watching today, you realize that you are only using a really small portion of what you are actually capable of. And sometimes, making decisions, even when you feel like you may not be ready, might be exactly the right time for you to do it, because it pushes you outside of your comfort zone and enables you to have that moment of release, freedom, and enables you to grow to the next level. Which brings me, I was going to tell you the story about what's happened to me fairly recently. So for some of you, you may also know that I was if you're familiar with the brand ClickFunnels, which is an international marketing brand. They have a very good marketing platform that myself and a number of other people had been utilizing and going through this international coaching program. And I've been in it for a couple of years. And I was tapped on the shoulder by Russell Brunson, who is the CEO of that company a few years ago, and was asked to be one of the international ambassadors for it. With that ambassadorship came a badge that you wore, and it was like this badge of honor that I could put on my personal profile. And it was like, really, to be honest, it was like a big donut that sat around your head on your personal profile. But I was proud of it. I had that out there, and it meant something to me. Well, yesterday I decided that, you know what, in this moment, the decision that I need to make is to actually cut myself free from the attachment to that. And I want to talk about this too, this attachment piece, because it goes hand in hand with knowing that the timing is right. And sometimes we actually have to let go of things to allow us to be able to move forward and create the space and the time to be able to do the new. So to me, it's not always about, so if you're in a space where you're kind of trying to add more and more and more and more into your life, probably what you need to do is actually take a step back, take a breather, look at things, and actually start culling away different things. Look at that. Someone's saying, I noticed you removed that donut yesterday. Yes, I absolutely did. And boy, it felt good. Not to say that I'm not a big advocate of that organization or their mission anymore, because I absolutely am. And I highly respect Russell and Todd and what they do in that organization. But it was just time for me to kind of like let go of some things to allow me to move forward and do all the stuff that I'm doing. And I could be the champion of not of somebody else's organization, but I could be the champion of me, of Tracy Wilson, and what I'm now doing with some other amazing people. So I share that story with you because when I was thinking about that yesterday and I made that decision, as small as that may seem to other people, it's like, big deal. You changed your profile picture. Woohoo. But really, it was a big deal to me. And when I thought about it, I thought about the fact that I was attached to that. And that attachment can often be a problem for us. We attach ourselves to things. And in another episode, I actually want to talk about the difference between attachment and ownership, and how those two things can often cloud our judgment and stop us and prevent us from really flourishing and allowing our wings to to expand and to enable us to fly. So someone's saying it was a bold move. Yeah, it was a bold move, but I feel really good about it, and I wanted to share that today because something like that, when you're attached to a big organization, to something, you attach a label to that, that doesn't always serve you well. It can do at the time, but then there comes a point where you need to make a decision and allow that time in your life to be in the past and to allow you to move forward into something new. So I'm pretty excited that actually happened yesterday, and I've got some cool stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you guys about what's coming next in the world of Tracy Wilson and Metadime and also the Unlock Show over the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that. But there's also this, I wanted to share with you this inner genius. So I alluded to this a little bit earlier and said that, inside of us, there is this inner genius. And when we're making decisions, often we revert to, also unknowingly, we revert to our kind of like factory setting of inner genius. And there's 5 of these, and I'm not going to reveal them all now because I actually want to hold those for you guys to actually read the book a little bit down the track when we release it. But there are 5 of them, and when you understand what these 5 inner geniuses are, they actually help you to determine how you make decisions. When you know what your inner genius is, you can make a decision based on the inner genius that you have. So an example of this might be, and I'm going to kind of I'll give you an example of one. So one of them might be, I'm a scholastic, meaning that I like to, I'm really smart. I love to comprehend things. And it's really easy for somebody who's in that scholastic, who has a scholastic inner genius genius to be able to learn, and they love learning, but sometimes they can be a little bit introverted and they're not always socially graceful. Sometimes they can be a bit of a renegade. So when you understand what your inner genius is, you can then apply that inner genius to help you make use good discernment when you're making decisions. When you make a decision and it's out of alignment with who you are and your values, which I've talked about before, who you are at a subconscious level, and also when it doesn't align with your inner genius, sometimes it can feel really uncomfortable, and that's where you get the anxiousness come in, and the procrastination. Usually that's a sign to you that, hey, something is not quite right. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It just means that you need to look at what is your, like factory setting inner genius, and you look at the things that you should be doing to help you make a good decision. So I'm going to give you another example of that. So it might be that as if you're going to come up with one of these 5 inner geniuses, because you will be one of them, or multiples of them. You're then going to go, well, when I'm making a decision, for me to feel really comfortable, I may be somebody who actually needs to do a lot of research. So I need to research, I need to get all my ducks in a line, I need to make sure that I've got everything in order before I make that decision. Because if you make a decision and you are somebody who needs to do that and you haven't done it, then it's going to feel very uncomfortable for you. Equally, if you're somebody who does more of like that gut feeling, like if you're more of an intuitive, which I can often go on my gut feeling, like, I made a bit of a joke about, my diffuser here being my crystal ball, that I can kind of sense and I can feel, and I know whether or not I've made a decision based on how I'm feeling. So I know that when I make a decision, if you are an intuitive, you're usually going to go, you know what, everything's flowing really well. It feels really good. I have less negative thoughts in your head. And often when you're in that flow, things will it becomes like this. I kind of call it like the matrix. It's like you're walking, and all of a sudden the next piece of the puzzle is just in front of you. That next piece of the pavement has just been laid so you can take the next step. And it's as if it's just like got a life of its own, and it is just happening. That's how I know that I'm in alignment, and I know that things are going right, is because all of these things are happening without me having to force, without me having to hold on to things really, really tightly, and feel like I'm in ownership of everything. So for you guys, it might be that sometimes you just need to sit back. And I've talked about like meditation. I've talked about, just sitting with, the decision that you need to make, thinking about it, bringing it to front of mind, thinking about, is the time right? And then just making that decision. Does it really matter if you make the decision at the wrong time? Well, doesn't really, because what I've also found is that even though I may have made a decision at a time and it hasn't quite panned out the way that I had envisaged it would, down the track, I've also found that because I made the decision way back when, it served me really well in that future moment. So it served me well here today. So I can think about, there are times where I've wanted to bring to life a new business, and it didn't quite work out. But I can tell you now that the experience of me going through that and making maybe what someone would consider, in inverted commas here, the wrong decision at that time, is actually absolutely the right decision, because I made that. I'm a better person for it. I've learned through that experience, and now I'm able to share that experience with others to help them navigate, any potholes in the road that they might have to navigate. So I know this is kind of like you're wanting to come here today, and it was like, well, how do I know, Tracy? How, there must be some scientific mathematical equation that tells me that now is absolutely the right time because the stars have all aligned and it's the right time for me to do things. You can take on board all of that stuff, and sometimes that is the case, but in most cases, none of us have a crystal ball. None of us, really know if the time is right. Sometimes you've got to trust your own intuition. You've got to trust your own abilities, and you just do it. Just jump, put the right people around you, get into groups like we've got now, make sure that you're well supported. And all of a sudden, what you thought was potentially impossible to do or a little bit of a challenge to do becomes really, really easy. I've also started, for the last couple of years, really started living by this, the philosophy, I suppose, of let it flow. So everything comes easily. I don't have to worry about things. And I'm not saying that I don't have to worry about things. This is a mentality that I have. I think about things. I think, well, the right people are going to be brought into my life at the right time. I'm always going to have enough money and resources to do whatever it is that I need to do. And when I started looking at things this way, boy, stuff just started happening. All of that stuff started to happen, and all the things that I wanted came to fruition. But also, not having a expectation of the outcome. Often when we go, hey, is the time right for me to make a decision right now? We make that decision, and then we determine later on, hey, that wasn't the right decision. But we're determining the fact that it wasn't the right decision because we had an expectation at the beginning. We had an expectation that I'm going to make X amount of dollars. I had an expectation that the right person is going to come into my life at that time. So we have all of these expectations, and we attach ourselves to those. We're saying if those don't happen, then the decision that I made was wrong. Right? So sometimes this is just all comes down to our perception and the way in which we look at things. So if we looked at, I made a decision and it didn't quite go the way that I expected it to, but boy, I got a whole lot of other stuff out of that experience that I had, then was it the right decision? You tell me. I would say it probably was the right decision because you learned a lot of stuff from it, and you were able to move forward with something new. And don't forget that in any given moment, like I said right at the beginning of today's show, is that we make decisions in every second of every day. Your mind is ticking, you're constantly making decisions. So if that is the case, you have the power to be able to change your mind and make a new decision and go in another direction. So I don't believe that, we have to be stuck on, oh, I've got to wait and I've got to wait till I've got everything kind of lined up and everything is in order. And, now is the right time for me to have a baby and I'm going to line everything up and I need to do this and that. Let's just go with the flow and allow things to happen. I'm just going to check the comments here because I got comments coming in thick and fast. Here we go. What have we got saying here? So Scott Stevens has just messaged and he said, you've got to let go. So there's room for something greater to come into your life. Absolutely, Scott. It's like having a cup, right? And it's like we are this vessel. We can put whatever we want into that vessel. But if we start filling up, just like a cup, if we start filling it up with a whole lot of garbage that we don't want in there, we want nice, clean water, then sometimes you have to tip the old out to be able to fill it up with the new. So just, in today's session, I want you guys to just think about what have you got in your life right now that maybe you don't need. Maybe it's time to shed, it's time to let go. If you think about, in nature, I think about the lobster. A lobster has this hard shell on it, but to enable that lobster to actually grow, it's got to bust out of that shell and allow the new shell to come through. So it's exactly the same for us. I'm just gonna hi Robert, I'm just trying to find a comment. You must have made a comment somewhere, and because some people are talking about it right now. So nice to have you on the show with us today. So I just wanted to talk about that today. It's just, do you really know when the time is right? The only person that does know is you. You just got to go for it. Make the decision. You always have the choice to make a new one. So thanks so much for joining me today, guys. It's always fun. It's Friday afternoon, or Friday morning here. It's just after 10 a.m. here in Australia. I woke up this morning with the crack of dawn with the birds, and some of the team and I were up, and they got to watch the sunrise here in Australia on the Gold Coast, which was pretty special. And I wanted to let you guys know that the Unlock Show is also now a podcast. So for those of you that can't always watch live, love to have you here live, obviously, so that we can chat and you can talk with me in the comments section. But if you're listening to like the podcast right now, thank you for downloading the podcast. And if you're finding these sessions valuable, then I would recommend that you either get yourself into the Success Secrets for Family, Business and Life group. You tell your friends to get in here. And secondly, if you're enjoying this, share the podcast version with your friends so they can also get in on, and start living their life unlocked and learn some of these things that I'm sharing with you. So podcast, you can now get that on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and on Spotify. So go and look for Unlocked with Tracy Wilson. You'll get the show episodes will also be there, and you'll be able to download the podcast and be able to listen to these so that you don't miss any of them. You can also check us out on YouTube. So if you go to the Metadime channel on YouTube, currently it's under Smart. Oh, blank now. It used to be called, help me out here, Vicky Helm. She's on the show right now. So we've got a YouTube channel, which is, what is it, Vic? This is look, that's the beauty of doing these live shows, right? It's like, my blank, because we changed the name. We are now Metadime Digital, but Smart Life Club. See, you might have a buddy in the comments that will tell me Smart Life Club. So go check us out on YouTube. It is currently called the Smart Life Club, that you can go to there, and you'll find all of our shows there. So if you ever want to watch them in the replay, you can do so on YouTube, but also in the video section of the Success Secrets for Family, Business and Life Facebook group. So guys, I'm going to be back again next week. So I'll be back with a show next Wednesday, which is my Wednesday in Australia, your guys' Tuesday if you're hanging out with me from the US and elsewhere. And I'm going to have the amazing Wendy Shankel on with me. And we're going to be talking about how to sell to women. So I'm looking forward to having a chat with her, and she's going to tell us all about her brand new book. I won't reveal that just yet, but hang out with us next week. And like as per normal, comment with us inside of the group, ask any questions. If you've got any particular things that you want me to talk about on the show, let me know. And also, if you go to the Metadime website, you can also talk to us. So let us know, and we'll even feature you on a show. So go and check me out. Go to my podcast page, also Vicky's and Scott's. There's a section there where you can actually ask a question. Go and ask us a question. We'll be sure to make sure that we create those as a show topic, and we'll even feature you on the show. So thank you so much, guys, for watching today. And I can see my husband's even in the house today. So hello, John Wilson. Great to have you here. And I will be back next week. So have a fantastic week. Thanks so much. You've been watching The Unlock Show. I'm Tracy Wilson, and it's been my pleasure to be with you today. Have a great day. See you guys.